So our gut is super important because it keeps us alive. It is basically the most important organ in our body, in my opinion. And what is the goal? It is our digestion is meant to absorb and secrete. So we want to consume food in the form of fats, proteins, carbohydrates, and those are polymers. So when you get them, it's a chain of polymers, whatever you're eating, whether it's a protein, a carb, or a fat. And our body absorbs them and breaks them down into monomers. So it just breaks them down into like single things. And then our body in turn, we've learned that our gut does is actually the microbes in our gut, but we take those and we turn them back into polymers. So this whole, that's basically the point of our digestion, is to take these nutrients, break them down, absorb them, and then create new nutrients that our body uses. And there are actually 74% of Americans that suffer from GI discomfort, which is a lot. And it's continuing to grow, especially in Western worlds. And I think it's because of, the way we're changing our food and over sanitizing. It's taking away from our relationship of eating like live food. And so with digestion, there's important factors that contribute to it. Our relationship with food and also our environment. So it's important that when you're eating, that you take care of your environment. So if anyone has ever had a meal while they're super stressed out, maybe they just got into a fight with their boss, with their boyfriend, how your body like doesn't digest very well when that happens. You can actually feel like your stomach like churn up into knots. And so it's super important that when you do eat, you eat in a very like mindful way, like eating at your desk every day while you're stressed about some project or assignment you're trying to get done. Your body's not absorbing it very well, because if you are eating food while you're stressed about something, your body's in fight or flight mode. So for example, let's say you have to like finish this project for your boss, and so you're eating your food at your desk and you're just chowing down super quickly. You're scarfing it down, not even thinking about what you're eating. Your body is actually not absorbing that very well, because if you're stressed about this assignment, your body goes into fight or flight mode. And when your body's in fight or flight mode, it thinks you're being attacked by a bear. So it's like, oh no, you're being attacked by a bear. We need to like do whatever we can to get you away. And so all of your blood flow goes to your arms and because that is what's going to keep you alive. If we go way back, when you're being attacked by a bear, you need to run. So your blood flow goes to your arms and your legs, and digestion is the last thing that is necessary. And so your body is consumed with these other parts of your body, so you're not able to digest very well. So if you're eating like in a stressed out state constantly, you're not absorbing a lot of the nutrients that you should if you were in a very like relaxed, happy environment, sitting in nature, maybe with your family or a boyfriend or girlfriend, and like loving the moment and like really thinking about the food and chewing it well and enjoying each bite. Your body will absorb it so much better. So it's super important, the relationship you have with food if you're stressed or happy, and then also the environment of where you're eating it. And so let's see. So the small intestine is where most of the food gets absorbed, and then the large intestine is where it all gets, where it all exits your body. But there's not a lot of absorption in there. but the large intestine is where all of the bacteria reside, or the majority of bacteria in your body. And did you guys know that we're only 10% humans and 90% bacteria? So the majority of our body is bacteria cells. So you can imagine the importance of them if they literally take up 90% of our body. They are everywhere in our body, but the majority are in our gut. So from our mouth down to our anus. And they have such a huge impact on, you know, everything in our lives. If we put them all together, they weigh about the size of our liver, our brain. So you can imagine, like, those two organs are critical for us, and the bacteria that reside in us weigh just as much as them. And I think they're just as powerful and important. And so when you are digesting food, so now I'm going to talk about a little bit about the gut and the gut barrier. So a lot of people may have problems with their gut, with digestion. It's because of the gut barrier. So people talk about leaky gut and what that means, but leaky gut doesn't mean like going to the bathroom. It's actually a break in the intestinal lining. So when you're eating food, we have these epithelial cells that are basically the barrier between the outside world and our internal body. So when we're eating food, these cells basically keep out bad things. You know, whatever we take in, we extract the nutrients, and then they go through these epithelial cells into our body. And so there's a problem when there's a break in this gut lining. So they're like super tight together to make sure no can get in. Like the junction is like super tight, nothing can get through. But if the cells start to loosen up for a variety of you know, many different reasons, then pathogens can start to get through, and that creates a leaky gut because there's proteins or other substances that make it through the gut lining, and then the immune system doesn't recognize them and goes into attack. So it's super important that we have a really solid gut lining, and there are ways to have a good gut lining, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And it happens when there's inflammation in the gut. So when the gut has inflammation, there is a liquid between the mucous wall and the capillaries. And so by eating the right foods, so we may be eating the right foods and digesting well, but we may not be absorbing well because the nutrients can't get through all of the liquid that in the mucosal wall. So it's super important to understand that it's not just about eating healthy, because you could be eating all the kale in the world and all of the healthy things, but if your body isn't functioning well, you're not absorbing it. So you could be absorbing 90% of what you're eating if your body is functioning well, and only 10% if it's not functioning very well. So it's super important to be like aware of your body and knowing what's going on so that you can basically find a way to heal it from like the core problem. Let's see. So bacteria. So each of us have a ton of different bacteria in our body. There's this tribe in Tasmania, and they carry 1,700 different species of bacteria, which is a lot. And the Western world, through a variety of reasons, most likely from processed food and sugar and over sanitizing, we have wiped away a lot of the bacteria. So we actually only have about 1,000 different species of bacteria. So our ancestors and, you know, some tribes that haven't been westernized, they have 1,700 different species, and we only have 1,000. And I mean, 1,000 is still a lot, but if you think about it, you're wiping out an entire species. So imagine even animals. If one animal gets wiped out, it has a whole negative effect on the entire ecosystem. And so if you can think about that in your gut bacteria, if you wipe out even just one bacteria, there are others that will come into play, but it's essentially going to totally disrupt the ecosystem. You're completely, you know, changing what your body has always used. So for example, let's see. And also, these microbes can turn on and off human genes. So if you are, say you go vegan and you eat vegan for 10 years, and your body starts to adapt, and you actually build microbes that eat all of those, all of the fibers from vegetables. So if you look at your bacteria in your gut, you'll have tons of bacteria to break down vegetables and all of the foods that you would eat as a vegan. And there aren't that many that would be breaking down meat. Because you're not eating meat, the bacteria are not eating the meat particles that you're ingesting. So, but what's really fascinating is if you change from being vegan and you start eating meat again, your body will start producing, or your body, these like bacteria in your body will pop out and they will show up and start eating the meat that you're consuming, which is great because as a human, our human cells can't adapt that quickly. It would take a long time, years, for us to adapt, but our bacteria cells can adapt and change within 2 to 5 days. If you go from vegan to being a carnivore, it may take an adjustment of a few days, but within 5 days, you're going to start building bacteria to eat the meat that you started eating. So it's really amazing and powerful what these bacteria can do. So if you're eating a super healthy meal, the bacteria will be eating that. And if you start to eat really poorly, the bacteria will start to populate for that. So for example, let's imagine that you used to eat sandwiches for lunch every day, you know? And it's always been fine. You eat a sandwich every day for lunch and nothing happens, you always feel great. And then all of a sudden, one day you eat a sandwich and it doesn't really feel that well. Like you feel like maybe bloated or you feel like it's not really digesting very well and something's up. And the more sandwiches you eat at lunchtime, the worse and worse these symptoms get. You could decide, okay, I'm not gonna have sandwiches anymore. I'm gonna switch to having a salad or, you know, something else that's gluten-free. You may feel better from having the salad. So maybe now you have a salad every day and you don't have the same reactions and same problems. But you're essentially just avoiding the problem because you've developed some sort of immunity to eating bread. And now you're just switching what you're eating to a salad and you think, okay, now, you know, I just have to have salads and I can't have it anymore. But the real problem is that your microbiota, so your microbiome, which is composed of different microbes and fungi and other things, there is an imbalance. And when there's an imbalance, you can't digest very well. And so instead of just switching to a salad, what you have to do is eat foods that will build up your intestinal or your microbiota. So let's say we have 1,000 different species, and maybe they each, you know, have equal amounts. Say these 1,000 different species each equally have a portion of space in our gut. If one starts to populate and maybe it has like maybe one of the 1,000 species has 25% of the population. That's way too much, and our our body starts to develop disease because of this normally. And it's not, so there's a ton of different bacteria, but one is not necessarily good or bad. So for example, there was one of H. pylori, which, you guys know what H. pylori is? Anyways,
Yes.
So
I've had it.
Oh, really? So it's
it was really awful.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's normally linked to stomach ulcers and stomach cancer. And it's but it used to be considered as something we had to get rid of. So we thought, and this could be anything, but for example, we'll use H. pylori. So they tried to get rid of it. And then by getting rid of it, they realized that it actually led to a rise of other conditions, including type 2 diabetes, obesity, celiac, and other autoimmune diseases. So we actually all need to have H. pylori in our gut. It's important. We also actually all have to have E. coli in our gut. It's really critical that we have a certain amount, but we have to have a certain percentage and not have it overpopulate. So when the H. pylori overpopulates, that's when it could lead to a stomach ulcer or a cancer because it's become too much. But if we can keep it, like let's say we need to have 1% H. pylori, that's great. And it actually is like contributing to our overall health and keeping us like in, optimal health and in alignment. But when it changes from maybe 1% to 5%, that's when maybe we start to get an ulcer or a cancer. And so it's super important that we keep a diverse gut bacteria in order to avoid one of them from overpopulating. Like E. coli. E. coli is fine. We should all have E. coli in our body. We shouldn't be doing anything to like wipe out E. coli. But of course, like when Chipotle or lettuce brands have an E. coli outbreak, we want to avoid it because an overpopulation of E. coli does have a negative effect. So it's not that bacteria are good or bad, it's about understanding the whole ecosystem and making sure that they all live in alignment together and that one of them is not overpopulating, they each keep each other in balance. And that's basically how to optimize your health. And so let's see, some of the, or actually, yeah, people used to think that bacteria were bad. Back in the 1860s, Louis Pasteur said disease is caused by bacteria in the body. So we used to think, okay, if we can kill all the bacteria in our body, we'll be healthy. But that wasn't the case. We actually need these microbes and bacteria in our body to fight off pathogens and keep us healthy. And it's just a matter of the imbalance of the ecosystem. So bacteria in our gut, they are important because they regulate our hormones, they eliminate toxins, they are creating natural antibiotics, they're influences in obesity and diabetes, and they directly affect the immune system. So these bacteria play a critical role in our overall health. So it's important that we nourish them well and we take really good care of them. If you have a lack, let's see. Actually, a lack of exposure to germs will weaken your immune system. So I know, especially now with coronavirus, everyone's buying all these hand sanitizers and antibacterial gel, but it's actually killing off. It's like just putting a bomb somewhere and killing everything. So let's say you have an overpopulation of one, so you want to like go in and kill it, but you're killing the entire ecosystem, and they all have to build back up. So yes, sometimes it's critical, like when you take antibiotics, that you need to kill everything in order to survive. Antibiotics are amazing in some ways, but we've gotten to the point of overusing them. Americans are prescribed about 5 rounds of antibiotics a year, and you're basically just like putting off a bomb and killing everything in your ecosystem. And when you do that, it's super easy for one of them to overpopulate, because now you have like all this free space. And so if one of them overpopulates, you're going to get an imbalance, which leads to disease and everything. And also, same with antibacterial gel, you're basically killing all of the good bacteria on your hands. And like, yes, doctors should be using, you know, strong antibacterial gels when they're doing surgeries. But when we use them every day, sitting in the office, just cleaning our hands and cleaning our hands, we're basically like wiping away all of the good bacteria as well. So it's and our body, like if our body is in good balance and we have a strong immune system, they're going to keep things in check. And yes, you should. It's not healthy to maybe like on the subway or, you know, in the sewer to like put your hands in that and touch it all over your body. But if you're, you know, in nature and playing in dirt, or, you know, going for a hike and your hands are full of dirt, like that's actually good. And also eating fruits and vegetables from the farmer's market with dirt on them, it's actually fine. Yes, wash it up. You don't want to eat like a mouthful of dirt, but if there's some dirt particles on like a carrot from the ground and, you know, it's not full of pesticides, that bacteria actually from the dirt actually helps digest the food better. So instead of thinking of bacteria as a bad thing, they're actually these amazing creatures that help us do our daily tasks, such as digesting food and consuming food. So I think they're actually really amazing and awesome. And also, there was this cholera example from 1892. So this guy, Metchnikoff, he noticed that some people were developing disease while others were not. So some people could get in contact with cholera and become super sick and die, and other people would have no problem. So he was like, this is interesting. Why is this the case? Why does someone who gets infected with cholera die and the other person have absolutely no reaction? So he decided that he would do a test on himself, and he got basically a thing of cholera and made like a cholera Coca-Cola and drank it, and nothing happened. He was fine. So then he got another person who participate, and also nothing happened. Drank the cholera, was fine. Then the second person drank the cholera, got severely sick, and nearly died. So he decided to bring this experiment into a petri dish, and he looked at the microbes and discovered that some of them were hindered by the cholera growth and others were stimulated. And basically it came back to our gut flora, so the microbes in our gut. So depending on what's going on in our microbiome, we either have the ability to fight off the cholera and basically hinder its growth, or if we have an imbalance and like a weak gut, then the cholera could come in, invade us, and kill us. So it's super interesting, and that was also, he was the first one who decided to look at probiotics and basically extract a strain of probiotics from milk and use that to heal your gut. So we thought, okay, if this pathogen can hurt your stomach or your gut, how could we develop one that's going to be beneficial for your gut? So he's kind of the pioneer of probiotics, which are great for your gut. So I don't know if you want to go over some ways to, so basically imagine your gut like a garden. So you have this like garden that you need to take care of. And the first thing you want to do is you want to get out all of the weeds. So if you're going to plant a garden of all these like, you know, delicious tomatoes and this and that, the first thing you want to do is you want to strip it away all of the weeds in there. So the same thing goes with your gut. Before trying to like feed it with all of these healthy things, you want to strip it away from all of the bad bacteria, or bad bacteria meaning like an overgrowth of the bacteria. And so there are a few ways to do that. First is to limit the use of NSAIDs, which is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Basically, Aleve, Advil, ibuprofen. It's fine to take them every once in a while, but if you're taking them for more than a few days in a row, it starts to like seriously disrupt your microbiome. They have a negative effect. And it's not that you can't ever take them, but we tend to take them on a daily basis and not think about it, and it's just a quick fix, but it's actually deteriorating your microbiome. And also the reduction of antibiotics. Of course, when you need antibiotics, take them, but a lot of the time we're just prescribed because we have work to do and we don't want to stay sick for that long, and so we just take them to cut our flu in half, or our cold in half, and that basically is just a bomb in our microbiome, killing everything. And it's really hard to build up a diverse ecosystem after that. Also, the antibacterial soaps and cleaning products definitely kill the bacteria. It's best to just use soap and water. It does a great job. Just the old-fashioned soap and water, bar of soap and water, literally the best thing you could do to wash yourself. We don't need to sanitize. We used to think that we had to sanitize to kill the bacteria to be healthy, but that was something that we believed many years ago, and with all this new science, we realized we don't need to. But a lot of people, for some reason, use a ton of antibacterial stuff. I mean, yes, if you're in the hospital, you can use it. If you're in contact with someone who's sick, sure, but we don't need to be using it at the office every day, because it does kill our microbiome. And then the overeating of meat. Meat's fine, especially if it's organic and ethically grown, but if you're eating super fatty meat all the time, it really does have a negative effect on your microbiome. And artificial sweeteners. So because they were shown to have no calories in us and not really have a negative effect on our health, that they were fine, but we're realizing that our microbes in our body are actually eating these artificial sweeteners. So, for example, when we eat vegetables have soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble means our body can break it down. So when we eat a vegetable, we have all of these fibers, and the soluble ones our body breaks down. The insoluble ones basically go to waste and are pushed through our large intestine out of our body. But we realized that the insoluble fiber that we don't actually, our body isn't able to absorb whatsoever, the bacteria that live in us actually absorb that fiber. So even though we can't, they can digest it, and whatever they digest of that, they actually change it into nutrients for our body. So maybe they eat something and only 3% turns into nutrients, but those 3% of nutrients are critical for our body. And so same as these artificial sweeteners, even though we're not eating them, our microbes in our body are eating them. And then they're turning it into something for our body. And the artificial sweeteners are shown to have a negative effect on us through our microbiome. And it's shown that a glucose intolerance is induced by our gut eating them and consuming them. So it's important to really stay away from them. And then 5 ways to improve your gut bacteria. Lots of fiber. So fiber comes from vegetables, fruits, legumes like beans, whole grains, oat, barley, flaxseed. These are all really good. What is good is when you have, so like white flour. The reason white flour is not good is because of the process of how it's made. You know, back in the day, we just did minimal things with wheat, but now this fine white flour we get is so stripped of everything that it's not beneficial for us. So they take out the wheat germ, and the wheat germ is actually a super critical part of our digestion. So when you're stripping all of these things away, it's basically getting digested into our body too quickly and never makes it to our gut. So the problem with like having straight sugar or super processed flour is that it's processed too quickly in our body and it never makes its way to the gut. So it's super important that we have these complex foods like vegetables that don't get fully absorbed by the body and make their way to our large intestine, and the microbes get to eat it and then turn it into, you know, a nutrient that our body actually gets to absorb. And so let's see, a really good source of soluble fiber is inulin. And inulin is really prominent in garlic, onion, leeks, jicama, and Jerusalem artichoke. Our microbes also eat this soluble fiber as well. So whether it's soluble or insoluble, they eat it all, and only we can eat the soluble. Another one is whole grains. So again, not the super processed white flour, but whole grains that, you know, are more complex. The reason they actually took out the wheat germ and flour is because it had a longer shelf life. So if you think about it, all of the foods that have super long shelf lives, they normally have something extracted from them for that. And oh, I see I have chats. Let's see. There was a question. Does this include stevia? So stevia is supposed to be natural and it's supposed to be fine. I'm on the fence about stevia. I think small amounts of stevia is fine. A small amount of stevia goes a long, long way. So stevia, I would try it out. If you're having stevia and you feel fine and your body's, you know, absorbing it well, then continue with stevia. If you're having some stevia and you notice irritation in your stomach, there was a time when I was using stevia, and every time after I had it, I had like stomach pains in my abdomen, and so I stopped it for a while and didn't have it. And now I have some stevia. Like there's this nut butter that's delicious, and then they add a little bit of stevia, and I don't have any problem with it. But I think it's really about listening to your body, because there's a lot of you know, contradictory stuff on stevia, but for the most part it's natural. So if your body likes it, then go for it. If you're noticing that it's kind of disrupting things or making you feel bloated or whatever, then I would avoid it for now. And then, is there anything written about having negative effects on the body when eating quinoa? So someone can have rice, flax, and fiber, but quinoa kills the stomach. It's really to do. So there is no really good or bad food in my mind. Yes, for the most part, bad is highly processed and full of sugar. But everyone has a different microbiome. So imagine that imagine there's someone from Germany who eats meat and potatoes, and someone from Japan who eats rice and what's it called? What is it? The algae we eat with sushi that you wrap. What am I trying to think of? Seaweed. So if you are Japanese and your family has been eating seaweed for thousands of years, you have the microbes in your body, and you have basically the microbes in what you need to break it down. And your body like knows how to break it down because it's been in your diet and your ancestors' diet for thousands of years. And that's the same for someone who is in Germany you eat meat and potatoes. You have all of the digestive enzymes and the bacteria to properly digest it. When you switch and you have a Japanese person eat the diet of a German person, they don't have the bacteria to digest it. You're actually not absorbing the nutrients from it because you don't have the ability to extract the nutrients from your microbes, you know, taking the nutrients out of it. They can change, like you can change your microbiome and you can develop microbiome to digest the meat and potatoes, but initially it doesn't happen. And so it takes a while for your body to adapt and acclimate. So while eventually you will be able to, it doesn't happen overnight. It could take like months, years, decades, even sometimes, depending on what it is. And also, let's say, for example, quinoa is a no-go for you, but flax and rice is fine. If you have a leaky gut and you ate quinoa, and quinoa somehow, so you're supposed to have a super tight junction to keep out pathogens. But let's say because you have a leaky gut, the junction starts to get loose. And now all of a sudden some pathogens are getting through, but also maybe a particle of the quinoa got through. So because that quinoa got through that shouldn't have, your immune system will go into attack. So the immune system then thinks, okay, the quinoa is a pathogen. I must attack this pathogen right now. So whenever you eat quinoa, your body like automatically starts to go into attack mode. So it's not about never being able to have quinoa again. It's about building a tighter junction until your body learns that quinoa is like safe again. And so if you're eating something your stomach doesn't take it well, then like take it out of your diet. You know your body best. You can feel the difference of having something healthy and not healthy. So if your body's not working well with whatever you're having, then just stop eating it for a little while and start eating foods that are building your gut bacteria. And eventually you can reintroduce it. When I was diagnosed with Crohn's, I had to cut out so many things from my diet. And once I built up my gut lining and gut wall, I can now have almost anything without a problem. One big thing for me is chocolate. I can't have chocolate for the life of me. I instantly feel nauseous and sick. But I'm noticing that as I'm building my gut bacteria, that I can like smell it and it doesn't like make me want to vomit immediately. So as after like, I don't know, it take weeks, months, years to build up your gut wall. But once you do, you can likely have almost anything again without having any negative reactions. But until you get to that point, you need to like completely take out anything that is irritating you. So some other ways to improve your gut bacteria is to consume fermented foods like sauerkraut and kefir. Those are super helpful so bacteria, let's see, these fermented foods feed your bacteria. And then in addition to the fermented foods, you should prebiotics, which is what I talked about earlier. Prebiotics are the inulin, so the insoluble fiber that goes through your intestines. So basically you want to have, the most ideal thing to do is have lots of probiotics. So kefir and sauerkraut, kombucha sometimes, see how your body deals with it. Sometimes it's too caffeinated or full of sugar because they use sugar to create it. And then you want to have lots of vegetables because vegetables are full of food for the probiotics. The prebiotics are like vegetables like artichokes and asparagus, and those feed the probiotics, which are the bacteria. So it's important to have both. And then another way is to have a lot of healthy fats in your diet. So Mediterranean diet is ideal. It's 40% fat and 40 grams of fiber. And it's really good to help protect against colon cancer. And that's like olive oil, avocados, walnut oil, ghee. Ghee and butter have butyrate, which is super anti-inflammatory. So those are really great for you. Let's see. So those, does anyone have any questions on that? Am I making sense? Confusing?
No, keep going.
So those are the ways you can basically build up avoid processed foods. As basically the way to, your gut is alive. So your gut is this live ecosystem. In order to nourish it, you want to eat food that's alive. So you want to have food as fresh as you can. You know, go to the local farmer's market, get freshly picked vegetables from that day or that, like the day before. The more alive the food is, the more it's going to nurture you. So then stay away from packaged and processed foods. Like another one is emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are what bind oil and water together, basically. So if you pour oil and water together, they separate. If you've ever made your own almond milk, you've noticed that it eventually starts to separate, or even almond butter or some peanut butters. There's like an oil at the top, and then the rest is like this like chunky almond stuff, and you have to mix it together. So in order to avoid that and have this like perfectly textured, creamy, whatever, they have to use emulsifiers. And they used to not think that they were bad for us, but they actually kill our gut bacteria. So a lot of creams have it, a lot of salad dressings, even almond milk. A little bit of, almond milk is fine if you have a healthy gut. Your gut can afford to have some emulsifiers, but there are just so many ingredients these days full of emulsifiers. So if you have a leaky gut or some sort of imbalance, you want to stay away from them. And so that again goes back to have it as alive as possible. So if you want to have almond milk and you have a super leaky gut, then just make your own. It literally is just a handful. It's like 5 to 10 almonds in 2 cups of water, and you just blend it up. And then voila, you literally get your fresh almond milk. And if you want to make it like fancy, add some cinnamon, some dates, whatever else you want, and maybe a little bit of honey if you want in there. And all of that together will, that's like the most live version you can get. Also, if you want to like go another step further, you could put your almonds in water for a few hours or even a night before, and that starts to, what's it called? Open them up. Basically, it starts to like liven them up, and they open up and they like become more alive and active. So the more processed it is, the more processed the sugar, the flour, the whatever it is, it's basically hurting the microbiome. And the more alive it is, the more it's full of nutrients that's gonna like help your microbiome and keep you feeling great. And if you've ever had, I don't know, a package of chips or something just because you wanted a quick fix and noticed you didn't kind of crappy afterwards, you can tell that your body's not getting a lot out of it or really benefiting you. So it's super important to listen to your body. And so let's see. And then lastly, I'm just going to talk about coronavirus. So it's like I've also noticed for myself when I was in New York and I was super stressed and overworked and not taking care of my life, I was sick all the time. I would get sick for months at a time, literally months at a time. My whole office knew I was always sick, and it was terrible. And since I've been to Mexico and I'm like stress-free and eating really healthy again, I haven't been sick once, and I've been around people with like fevers and coughs all the time. Like you know, like half the time I've been here, I've been around a lot of sick people. And I think because my immune system is so strong, I'm not getting affected. And it's not to say if coronavirus gets in contact with me, I'll be fine. I may get sick. But I think that if the stronger your immune system, the easier it is to fight off this infection. And also, sugar, again, is really bad if you're sick. It's one of the worst things you could do if you're feeling bad because the sugar molecule looks very similar to vitamin C. So if you are eating a bunch of sugar instead of vitamin C, your body's going to think it's vitamin C and it actually takes the place of the vitamin C. And so instead of being able to go in and kill the pathogens, it's like incredibly weak. And they actually have done tests where they've seen people ingest sugar, and after 1 to 2 hours, they noticed a huge decrease in neutrophil. Neutrophil is a white blood cell. So when you're sick, your white blood cells get activated to go and kill the pathogens. And so one of the main ones that kills these pathogens is neutrophil. And when you eat sugar, the neutrophil decreases, I think, up to 50%. So you're basically only able to do half the work your body should naturally be able to fully do if you're having sugar. So cutting out sugar is a huge way to keep your body like functioning at optimal levels. So if you're afraid of getting sick or you have like a sore throat or something, like while you shouldn't be having that much sugar in general, you want to like cut out sugar. And that includes fruit, honey, dates, anything. Obviously like cake and soda and all of the like normal sweeteners like candy. But in addition to that, even orange, I mean, there's vitamin C in orange juice, but you can get vitamin C from vegetables. But an orange juice and all the sugar in that is going to also have the same effect as when you're talking about like pathogens. If you're not worried about getting sick, you can have fruit. It's great and fine. If you're worried about getting sick, you want to really avoid sugar. It's like the number one thing you can do. And like garlic is great, cooked garlic, like having fruits or having vegetables, but really avoid sugar if you're worried about getting sick. It will, if you don't have sugar, you can literally like shorten the span of your sickness by so much because your body will naturally be able to fight it. And also increasing your body temperature. So pathogens can't, that's why you get when you get a fever, it's actually good because your body's fighting it. When you have an elevated fever, that's your body going in to kill or attack the virus. And the virus can't survive in a high temperature, so it dies. So even if you have a temperature, don't ever try to lower it. Your body, it's super rare that you would die from a fever. Your body normally only can get to a certain level, but it's killing it off. So let it do the course and like you'll get better much, much faster. Let's see, what else? Any questions? How beneficial is kombucha? Kombucha is, I would listen to your body. Some people, it depends on how diverse it is. And I mean, if you make your own kombucha, that is very beneficial because you know exactly what you're putting into it, and you can also measure the amount of sugar. One of my friends makes her kombucha all the time, and it's really delicious and not that sweet. When you're buying store-bought, you never really know what you're getting, and normally they put in a lot of sugar and a lot of other stuff. So I like the flavor of kombucha. I drink it like I would drink a Pepsi, and I know like it's sweet, it tastes good, it's bubbly, and I like it. If you have a sensitive stomach or your gut is not functioning super well right now, I would drink it minimally and just see how your body is taking to it. Sometimes if you have like something going on and you just chug a kombucha, it almost does more bad than good. but it's really about listening to your body. Ideal case scenario is you learn how to make your own kombucha because you know exactly what you're putting into it, and you don't have to make it as sweet as a lot of the commercial kombuchas. Any other questions?
Actually, do you think it's good to buy any probiotics to take pills?
So I go back and forth on this one. I think probiotics can be good. If you find a probiotic that you think is helping you, absolutely take it. But I would definitely do research into the company and a lot of different factors. Because, for example, getting probiotics from dairy, kefir, sauerkraut, that's all great. I think it's good because it comes in a natural food form, but you can't get as strong of a dose. There's only so much that you can eat, so many probiotics you can eat with yogurt. So getting a probiotic is like a super, powerful dose of probiotics. So if you find one that you think is working with your body, that's great, but it has to be encapsulated properly so it actually makes its way to the small intestine. As in the stomach, the pH is so strong, a lot of things die. So most of the time, most of the probiotics are kind of a waste of money because they never actually make it to your small and large intestine, which is where it's beneficial. I think having them we've been having probiotics for thousands of years. Every culture has their own version of probiotics, like sauerkraut or the a whole different. So I would just try to incorporate as much fermented food into your diet as you can, and if you can, make it fresh. Like if you're buying sauerkraut from a store with a bunch of emulsifiers and preservatives, and stuff, it's kind of like neglecting the positive. So maybe make your own kefir. If you're dairy free, you can make a coconut version of your own kefir, and that's a really great way to get your probiotics. If you find a probiotic supplement that you love, then go for it. Like, use it, enjoy it. But if you don't think it's doing a lot of good, then don't waste your money.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
I was going to say on probiotics that my friend, the founders of Sakara Life, recommended this. So I've been taking it. I think it's great, but she's done a lot of studies herself because this is not a paid advertisement. But anyway, that's what I take. I think it's interesting, this Dr. O'Hero's probiotics. But obviously natural is always better.
Yes. But I mean, it's really, listen to your body. Like if you're taking a probiotic and you're feeling good after taking it and you think it's helping, then it's probably helping and you should keep taking it. If you don't think it's doing much, and then listen to your body. The best thing is to have the most natural alive food you can. That's what's really going to have a strong effect on you. Cut out the processed sugar foods and have a lot of live foods.
Sure.
Yes. Anything else? Was this helpful at all?
That's great. Those are
It is.
Good.
Any tips to clean our livers after the quarantine mode?
To clean our liver because of all of the drinking?
Yeah. What else should we do?
To clean the
Because of
liver?
the quarantine, not the drinking. We're not all in Mexico.
Wait, why is the liver bad because of quarantine?
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to drink. It's just like you have no ideas of time. It's just, it's another world. You're not there yet. I'm in Argentina. I had to be in quarantine when I came back from Brazil. Now 20 days ago. So, and I kept on going with 6 days now of quarantine. Yeah, that starts to be long.
It starts to be long. Yeah,
That's gonna come to you.
I don't mind the quarantine actually. I'm in my little hibernation hole, like reading and.
Yeah, no, the thing is that we
Scroll
cannot
daily.
go walk in the street. We cannot do anything.
Yeah, walking on the street would be hard. I at least can go for a walk to the park. Yeah.
Yeah, enjoy as long as you can.
But yeah, I mean, for the liver.
Take the bunny.
Huh?
The bunny with you.
The liver actually knows how to clean itself, and it's not the liver function itself. It's not so much how to boost your liver, but how to boost things from being cycled back into your liver. So a lot of the time, the bile in your liver, it needs to be taken out, and sometimes it gets cycled back, and so you're having this like dirty bile cycled back into your liver over and over again. And the best way to get it out is through fiber. So having vegetables and beans, that's gonna like wipe the bile out of your liver. So have just basically a diet full of vegetables and legumes and whole grains will help get the bile out of your liver, because your liver can like function well. It's more so of like you pushing out the bile and the like toxic stuff that the liver is getting rid of, and not having it go back into your liver, but getting it out of your body. And by eating vegetables and fibrous foods, your body naturally does that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Anything else before we get off? Well, I'm so glad I got to see you all. This is so fun having a little like video hangout, and I know I talked most of the time, but it was so fun seeing all of your faces.
That's so nice. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Mwah. Bye, guys. Enjoy your day.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.